In this video, we will add a zippered pocket to a knitted purse. The pocket fabric is a firm woven fabric, even though we're applying it to a knitted fabric. The demo will be on the Guatemala Dreams bag. If you have watched the first video on this bag, completed the knitting, and the bind off completes the lining seam, you're ready for your pocket if you want one. This technique is not limited to this particular pattern. It's easily applied to any knitted design that does have a lining where a pocket would be helpful and appropriate. Those of you who both knit and sew may already be familiar with my book on combining the two skills called knitting and sew on. That involves actually sewing on your knits, using your skills as a seamstress to get nice finishes and do some of the shaping. These are skills I learned in my career as a professional seamstress, and I pass them on to you in the book. And you can get great finishes that way. But this pocket is different because we're not going to actually use the sewing machine on the knits. We will use it on the woven and then apply the pocket by hand to the knit. I'll place a link for knitting and sew on in the program notes in case that's something you'd like to look into. So, on with the pocket. Start with a rectangle of woven fabric and a nylon zipper of the kind you would use in a skirt at the waist. It won't be the right length, but that doesn't matter. Cut off about 1.5 inches of the pocket piece, and we'll apply our zipper to that. You can see how I'm orienting it. Then we can top stitch it right into place. It's easiest to stitch with the zipper open for this part. Start with the end of the zipper tape aligned with the end of the fabric. Fold it under, and it's not particularly finicky how much you fold under. Do what's comfortable. And sew until you run out of fabric, then back tack. The zipper will probably be extending beyond the edge of the fabric. And trim off your threads. Now zip the zipper closed and align the second piece of fabric, placing the two cut edges together, but turning under a seam allowance or an edge so as to not leave a raw edge. Leave the zipper teeth open, uncovered, because that works so well inside a purse. No extra fabric to snag. So now we've restored the pocket to its original shape, basically. Before you get to the end of this seam, it's a good idea to open the zipper so you have freedom of movement at the end and you're not trying to bump into that zipper pull. The square for the pocket is now a little bit smaller than it was because we've turned under two hem allowances or the seam to the zipper, and that's okay. You just need to plan ahead for that. We'll also turn under a hem around the edge, so include that in your size plan. Very near the edge of the fabric, stitch over the excess zipper length back and forth a few times and snip it off. I snipped it first in this example. If you snip first, as I did, you must handle it with great care so as not to separate the zipper. Sewing across the nylon zipper is not a problem. Just go slowly and carefully. Now turn under a hem about 1/2 inch, but nothing is particularly fussy, except at the opening end of the zipper. At that end, turn under almost all of the extra tape that's sticking out and the same amount of fabric, leaving just a tiny bit so as to be able to stitch across the end, making it impossible for the whole piece of fabric to just open up. Leave the zipper pulled down for this part of the operation so it's not in the way, but that means you must carefully align the ends of the fabric with your fingers so that the zipper will lay down flat as you want it to when it's finished. You may want to stitch back and forth across that end as well as at the other end of the zipper. At every corner, turn under the allowance for the next side before you actually reach the corner so that it'll be neat and underneath. The sides that are parallel to the zipper are very basic skills, something you've probably done a million times, though you may or may not be used to top stitching and turning under, or you can't actually see the turn under. But that's not something that's difficult to learn at all, especially since it's not particularly fussy. You're trying to make a pocket of about a certain size, not specific to the 1/8 of an inch. Here is the toughest side coming up. Turn it under as all the others were, but it contains the end of the zipper, so we'll have to sew over 2 layers of zipper. Most domestic machines will do it, but in order not to break a needle, it's important to approach slowly, possibly turn the wheel by hand, and using a fingertip to press down on the front of the presser foot can help it stay in alignment and stitch nicely. So now the pocket is hemmed and ready to apply, and because it's completely finished, we can hand sew it to the purse lining and never have to use the sewing machine on the knitted fabric. Position it where you'd like it to appear on the lining. Remember that the lining is the plain stockinette part, and pin it into place. Those who are knitting this actual purse need to realize that the beginning of the outer part of the purse actually is not quite the same as the beginning of the Fair Isle portion, because Fair Isle is longer than stockinette is when the fabrics are finished. So there will be some Fair Isle towards the inside of the purse. You will want to watch the video on finishing the purse to determine where exactly you want to place your pocket with that in mind. We use this fact about the 2 fabrics to make sure the lining is invisible on the finished purse. Get a needle and thread with suitable color, doubled, and now just whip stitch all the way around the finished pocket, because it's finished. We're just attaching it to the fabric. Be aware that if you try to anchor the knot in the knitted fabric, it's likely to pull right through. So anchor it in the woven fabric first. Make small stitches, and after a while you may find that you can make 2 or 3 in a row, as I'm doing here, before pulling the thread snug. Pull each stitch snug enough so that there is good contact with the purse lining fabric, but not snug enough to cause distortion. I like to reinforce the corners with an extra stitch. Work all the way around. If this purse will get hard use and you're concerned about that, you can always work twice around. Align the fabrics as they fall, so that if there are slight imperfections in either shape, the pocket still lays down. In other words, if you have a 4-inch pocket, rather than measuring a 4-inch spot on the knitted fabric and being rigid about the pocket covering that 4-inch spot, I find that just letting it lay there, relax, and pinning it in that position, it could possibly result in an 1/8 of an inch difference of position, but it's the way to go. The most difficult part is the zipper area, and most likely you will need to stitch twice towards one side of the zipper and twice towards the other side, and not actually stitch with a hand needle through the zipper. Even so, that area has multiple layers of fabric and zipper tape, so you will find those stitches somewhat strenuous. Using a good sharp sewing needle helps. And now we're all the way around, so we'll knot the thread and secure it. What I do is pull my thread to the inside of the fabric so it will be hidden between the lining and the outer, and do the snipping off there. That way no thread tail will show. And that's it. We have a good sturdy pocket that won't show from the outside of the bag because it's only sewn to the interior layer, the lining layer. It's very hard for anything to fall out of a pocket like this, and because I used Diamante yarn and knitted it firmly, it would be unlikely for anything to work through the fabric of the lining. See you in the finishing movie.